This is Jeremiah 51:1. Thus saith Yahweh, I will raise up against Babylon and against them that dwell in the midst of them, that raise up against me a destroying wind, and I will send unto Babylon fanners that shall fan her, and shall empty her land. For in the day of trouble they shall be against her round about. Against him that bendeth, let the archer bend his bow, and against him that lifteth himself up in his brigadine, and spare ye not her young men. Destroy ye utterly all her hosts. Thus the slain shall fall in the land of the Chaldeans, and they that are thrust through in her streets. For Israel have not been forsaken, nor Judah of his power. For Yahweh power of hosts, though their land was filled with sin against the Holy One of Israel. Flee out of the midst of Babylon, and deliver every man his soul. Be not cut off in her iniquity. For this is the time of Yahweh's vengeance. He will render unto her a recompense. Babylon hath been a golden cup in Yahweh's hand, that made all the earth drunken. The nations have drunken of her wine. Therefore the nations are mad. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Rakakwadash. Double honor to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Salutation to you, Akim, pushing his word with true sincerity, with charity, presenting your bodies as a living sacrifice. We who are ready to live salute you. All right. And we're in those times, okay, like in the vision of Daniel, okay. All right, we're in the time of those 10 toes, okay. Part brass, part miry clay, okay, which marks the end of the heathen rulership. All right, okay. And we see that America, which is the hammer of the earth, is doing just that, hammering the earth, okay, and even hammering its own allies. All right, okay. Scriptures talk about how this devil, his look was more stout than his fellows, man. All right. But I just want to go into this particular video, okay? And, I'm going to expound on it here and there, and it makes me think about the scripture where it says, every wise man careth for their beasts, but the tender mercies of the wicked are cruel, okay? Because as we know, and we're probably going to get the scripture, the beast shall hate the whore, man, okay? Because that whore that rides that beast has been basically abusing that beast, man. All right. But we're going to get into it, and, this is going to be a bit of an algorithm video. So, it's going to be a little lengthy, Lord willing. But we're going to go right into it. If you're not worried, you ought to be, and you must not be paying attention. Let me actually start with a statistic that ought to be front page. Yesterday, Monday of this last week, the Atlanta Federal Reserve Bank released its latest estimate for what is going to happen to the gross domestic product of the United States this year, 2025. The most recent earlier estimate a few weeks ago was in line with a general notion that it would be somewhere around 2%, maybe a bit more. The prediction of the Atlanta Federal Reserve Bank. And that information changes in a worsening direction almost anything and everything
we can talk about. The impact of the tariffs, the war economies that are being revved up in Europe. What we are seeing is a level of desperate acts that are desperate because even though the chances of their succeeding are small, enormous risks are being taken for the small chance of a good outcome. That's the definition of desperate. So, for example, the Europeans. The Europeans are watching, and it's so important for folks to understand this. Europe was the center of the universe for most of the last 15 centuries, at least for most of us. It was where we talked about the great Roman Empire, where we talked about the feudal 1,000 years, where we talked about the explosive development of modern capitalism, and where we talked about colonialism.
Right, and since you're talking about that, okay, all right, this is the Neo-Roman Empire, okay? This is that beast whose deadly wound was healed, man. All right, and it's basically going out the same way it did in the past. You notice he mentioned the war economy, okay? Well, the war economy is suffering, all right, here in Babylon the Great and abroad, okay, and basically, you have Russia, which is basically a threat to America, all right. That Europe is in no position to fight Russia, okay, and they know that. They're coming to a point where they're going to have to pick a side. They're coming to a point where they're going to have to make a choice. All right, and he's going to go into that, but we're going to continue.
And what was that? Europe taking over the rest of this planet one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
In all of that, the United States is a footnote. Okay? What we are seeing is that center of so much of world history, Europe, becoming a small side story. That ought to show people how deep the changes are we are living through. Europe has already been completely sidelined in terms of modern economics. The modern global economy, which is more global than it has ever been, is divided between two powerful centers: the United States and its major allies, the so-called G7, and China and its major allies, namely China and the BRICS. They were roughly equal as China rose and Europe, America declined. They hit an equal level around the year 2020. Since that time, because China and the BRICS have grown so much faster than the United States and Europe, they are now no longer equal. G7.
Right, and that's why they're going to have to make a choice. Okay, the BRICS nations, all right, have far surpassed, all right, America and its allies. All right, so they're gonna have to make a choice, man. And like this guy is saying, Europe has pretty much been sidelined. All right, they've been sidelined. A lot of their economies have collapsed a long time ago. If you're thinking about right, if you're thinking about places like Greece, okay, all right, these people have been pretty much abandoned. All right, and what does the scripture says? Hold on. This is Jeremiah 50:12. Your mother shall be sore confounded, right? And of course, America came out of Great Britain, all right? And now they're being confounded, all right, because they're pretty much being economically left behind, all right? She that bare you shall be ashamed. Behold, the hindermost of the nations shall be a wilderness, a dry land, and a desert. Okay, so they're gonna have to see in order to become what this man is basically explaining is that Europe is becoming irrelevant on the world stage, and now there's only pretty much um, two major players. Okay, you have America, of course, and his allies, and you have the BRICS nations. And the BRICS nations, all right, is basically have far surpassed America and his allies economically. All right. So they're going to have to choose a side, man, in order to be relevant at all. Because America, Babylon the Great, like I read, saying, thy mother shall be sore confounded. America is showing that they don't give a damn about these, about their allies, man. You know, they're riding the beast until the wheels fall off, man. All right. And the beast is going to come to a point where they're going to realize they have zero incentive, all right, to keep being led by this whore. All right. But let's delve a little bit more into it.
Europe and America basically account for about 28% of the world's output. China and the BRICS account for 35% of the world's output. They're already ahead of us. And if there's a recession this year, while growth in China is scheduled to be in the neighborhood of 5%, well, it'll only get worse. We are watching Europe become irrelevant. It's not in this story. It used to be a sidecar of the United States. And that sidecar has just had the button pressed. It's off on its own. It cannot keep up with the technological advances of Silicon Valley in the U.S. and of China in the rest of the world. They are the dominant, fill in the blank, everything in economics. And Europe.
Right. It reminds me of the movie Gangs of New York. You had the guy Frank White. He basically came into power. He was telling these other gangsters and stuff, and like, hey, you tired of getting ripped off by guys like that? Hey, come join me. All right, and that's what is happening. And they're backed by Russia, man. Matter of fact, let me grab that. Right. This is Ezekiel 38:1. And the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him. And say, Thus saith Yahweh power, behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. And I will turn thee back and put hooks in thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth and all thine armies, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor. Let me read that again. And I will turn thee back and put hooks in thy jaws, and bring thee forth in all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company, with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords, Persia, Ethiopia, Libya with them, all of them with shields and helmet, right? Gomer and all his bands, the house of Togomar of the north quarters and all his bands, and many people with thee. Be thou prepared and prepare for thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them, right? Because war, we've been seeing economic war and how it plays out over the years, man, and how America handles that. When you had Gaddafi that wanted to break away from the American dollar. What did they do? They sent in their armies and basically took them out. They did the same thing with Saddam Hussein. They did the same thing with Saddam Hussein. That's just pretty much their MO. But now with Russia backing these nations, America is pretty much at a stalemate. There's nothing they could do about that. All right. So, you know, these nations that are allied with America, they're gonna have to pick a side, man, because America is they're taking the L, and Europe is taking an even huger L, man. All right.
Isn't in everything in economics. With great fanfare, the leaders of Europe are talking about, as you rightly pointed, we're upping our defense spending. Von Leyden says, the German woman who's in charge of the EU, says we're going to spend, and then she pauses for effect, $680 billion. Then she adds in a low tone, over the next 4 years. $680 billion puts you in kindergarten. These are numbers that don't matter. And most of that is supposed to be spent to help Ukraine, which is pouring that down the drain. So they'll build up a defense, spend it in Ukraine, and then they won't even have it. It's a
And we see what's going on in Ukraine. Ukraine is pretty much done. All right, Ukraine is pretty much done. You know, they're pretty much property of Russia at this point. You know, and for that war, Russia only used a small percentage of their army. You know, so it's pretty much over for Ukraine, man, and that's why we're seeing those theatrics between Zelensky and Trump. You know, this is America really, putting on the show, trying to save face, man. Because the bitch is proud. The hoe is proud, and she don't want to admit that her time is up, you know. But Europe is coming to that realization that this whore that's been riding her, okay, she's going down, and she's gonna take everybody with her, man.
Bad joke. The public relations may work for people who don't know, but for anyone paying attention, Europe is plunging into irrelevance globally from having been the dominant leader of everything globally. That's the crucial thing. Yeah, the defense companies in Europe will get some more contracts. They're happy. But the only way the Europeans can shovel resources into defense is if they take them away from everything else.
Mm-hmm.
At a time when the European economy is already in trouble. The strongest country in Europe is Germany. It is in a recession as I speak with you. They're going to have to take money away from all the social services that Europeans have demanded and forced their governments to give them. Social services that Americans can't even imagine. Let me remind you all, in France, a country I know real well, so I'll use it as an example, but it's true for most of the others, at least in the western part. Once you go to work, you graduate high school or college, your employer is required to give you 5 weeks of fully paid vacation every year. That's the law. Doesn't depend on a union contract. It's the law. You get medical insurance for illness or injury from the day of your birth to the day of your death. Period.
Right. Free healthcare, nannies, I mean, the kind of social benefits that you get in Europe, man, like this guy said, the Americans can only dream of that. You get pregnant, you get a nanny, you get these paid days off, all these different social services. Well, like the man's saying, they're gonna have to take from that. You know, they're gonna suffer. They're gonna feel it. They're gonna feel it in the grocery stores. They're already feeling it there. They're feeling it in their pockets. All right. And they're gonna feel it from these social service cuts. Okay. And that's coming to America, man. That's coming to America, man. You know, hey, coming to a theater near you. All right. Let's listen to some more.
Going to college, the tuition in France is zero. On and I could go on. Those things are now going to be taken away in order to fund defense, which will still leave Europe far behind the United States in military capability and far behind the Russians and the Chinese working together now. And so it's too late for Europe. And they don't know what to do. And they're going to now do defense.
Mm-hmm.
A silly mistake that will be rude in the years ahead.
So this is the last final death throes of the Neo-Roman Empire. All right. And he's basically saying their last stitch effort in Europe is to spend money on defense. Well, it makes me think of the scripture where it says, "Breach your plowshares into swords and spears, and let the weak say that I am strong." Okay, because your last major act is going to be to shoot missiles on Babylon. So spend that money, okay, on defense, on missiles, because the last thing you're going to do, your last act that you're going to ever do before you go into slavery and before you're destroyed, all right, is to shoot missiles on Babylon, man. All right.
It's really extraordinary. They are acting as though they are not in the position they're in. Psychologists call this denial. The United States is showing how desperate by comparison it is. It is turning on its allies. So desperate is it to make its situation better that is going to whack Canada and whack Mexico with the tariffs that went into effect this morning. Wow.
Right. And and I was looking at a report about how Donald Trump basically wanted to cut or just basically totally stop spending for aid to these other countries, and it basically got blocked by the Supreme Court, which, like I said, a lot of this stuff is just theatrical, but it's where there's smoke, there's fire. Okay. All right. Because just like Antiochus, his scriptures talk about how he didn't have gifts to give so liberally, All right, he didn't have the money to pay because Antiochus he was buying a lot of friends, man, in his heyday, and when he had money to give liberally, he bought a lot of allies and friends, and that's the same thing America has done, but they don't have that to do that no more. All right, so hey, and like this guy's gonna go into they're dumping cargo right now. When the plane's going down and they're trying to keep it afloat, they start to dump cargo. And that's what America, Babylon the Great is doing. That's what these NATO nations are doing. All right, these allies of America. All right.
Jettisoning Europe, all the allies. When the ship is in trouble, it throws what it had on board, even if those things were valuable, overboard in order to make it through the storm. That's what we're seeing. And when you look at the policies, whether it's the tariff or it's the kissing Europe goodbye, you're seeing what in football is called a Hail Mary pass. It's when the quarterback, knowing that defeat is imminent, leans back and heaves the ball down the field, having told his teammates to run in that direction in the hope that the ball will bounce around in the air and eventually come down in the arms of someone on his team rather than the opposing team. Is that possible? Yes. If you ask me, is this collection of desperate acts actually going to save the situation? Is it possible? Yes. But it's possible in the same way that a Hail Mary pass is possible. It's not likely. It's not a reasonable thing to do. It's not something you would ever do unless you were desperate. Americans have got to understand this, or else they will see each step in this disaster all by itself without understanding the larger process in which we are now involved. And believe me, if the prediction of the Atlanta Federal Reserve Bank is correct, and most economists will think it is, they have a good record down there of making these kinds of predictions, then we are beginning, only at the beginning of the troubles that are going to beset this economy.
Right. Yeah. So, matter of fact, let me get a scripture on that. This is Zephaniah 1:10. And it shall come to pass in that day, saith Yahweh, that there shall be the noise of a cry from the fish gate, and howling from the second, and a great crash from the hills, right? And those hills represent governments, man. So it's gonna be an economic collapse. Okay. All right. How, ye inhabitants of Maktesh, for all the merchant people are cut down, all they that bear silver are cut off. Okay. And that's what's about to happen, man. Okay. All right. And like this guy said, all the things that you see America doing, its allies doing right now, are really just acts of desperation. All right. They're death throes. All right. Let me look up the word death throw. Death throw. Meaning death throw. No. Death throes. No. Right. Death throes is a noun that means the final stage of something before it ends, or the violent movements of a dying person or animal. It can also be used figuratively for describe the death, the decline of an industry or society. Right. So we're seeing the final death throes of the Neo-Roman Empire. All right. Okay. All right. The violent motions, when somebody's body shakes, all right, or they make violent movements as they pass away, all right, in order to, they're basically fighting death, you know. So that's where we are, with this kingdom, This is James 5:1. Go to now, ye rich men, weep and howl for your miseries that shall come upon you. Right. All right. And what scripture says, turn back, dwell deep, O inhabitants of Dedan. All right. These elites, they're gonna go into those bunkers, man. All right. They're gonna go run and hide, man. All right. Your riches are corrupted and your garments are moth eaten. Right. And just like the ancient Roman Empire, you had the devaluing of the denarius. All right. All right. Every aspect of that empire became decadent. All right. It's the same thing here. Your gold and silver is cankered, and the rust of them shall be a witness against you, and shall eat your flesh as it were fire. You have heaped treasure together for the last days. All right. And we are in those last days, man. All right. For guys who want to say the end could be 1,000 years from now. All right. You're out of your goddamn mind, man. All right. Well, we see what the Lord's doing with that guy, you know. Behold the hire of the laborers who have reaped down your fields, which is of you kept back by fraud. Right? See, this whole thing was a big Ponzi scheme, man. All right. Everything's going back into its intrinsic value. All right. Its true value. All right. It was all an illusion. It was all smoke and mirrors, man. That's why they had to shove the American dollar down these leaders' throats, man, by the force of the sword. All right. Because it's not backed by anything. It's nothing, man. It's just debt. Crieth, and the cries of them which have reaped are entered into the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth, right? The Lord of armies, man. Ye have lived in pleasure on earth and been wanton. Ye have nourished your hearts as in the day of slaughter, right? And the scriptures talk about how his eyes stand out with fatness. They have more than they could wish, man. All right, if you look at the Queen Mom before she passed, I remember they were basically talking about how a lot of the jewels she was wearing and stuff that was stole from different countries and different leaders, and you know, this guy's just been raping, robbing, and pillaging the whole earth, man. All right, hey, but we're at the end now. All right, let me get another one. Right. So I'm gonna come back to this Jeremiah 51 again. Babylon have been a golden cup in Yahweh's hand that made all the earth drunken. The nations have drunken of her wine. Therefore the nations are mad. And that includes your allies, man. All right. Because they're realizing that America has basically abused them. All right. And all their problems go back to Wall Street, man. All right, America's just been gambling with these people's lives, man. Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. Howl for her, take balm for her pain. If so be she may be healed. Right, you know. So there's not going to be no healing of Babylon the Great, man. This is it. We would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her, and let us go everyone into his own country. For her judgment reaches unto heaven, is lifted up even to the skies. Yahweh hath brought forth our righteousness. Come, let us declare in Zion the work of Yahweh, our power. Right. So yeah, man. I'm so lucky about that. Um, right. I'm gonna go back to 9. Yeah, we would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her, and let us go everyone into his own country, for her judgment reaches unto heaven, and is lifted up even to the skies. Yahweh hath brought forth our righteousness. Come, let us declare in Zion the work of Yahweh power. Make bright the arrows, right? The guy was basically saying, you know, that basically Europe can't to do anything else at this point but to up their defense spending, man. All right, so that's missiles, that's weaponry, right? Make bright the arrows, gather the shields. Yahweh hath raised up the spirit of the kings of the Medes for his devices against Babylon to destroy it, because it is the vengeance of Yahweh, the vengeance of his temple, right? And Yahweh Bashmi Shah has been putting a spirit on Vladimir Putin, man. All right, to basically gather these nations, man. All right, you're even gonna have Turkey in there, man. All right, which has one of the best militaries in NATO. All right, which you know set up the standard upon the walls of Babylon, make the watch strong. Set up the watchmen, prepare the ambushes, for Yahweh hath both devised and done that which he spake against the inhabitants of Babylon. O thou that dwellest upon many waters, abundant in treasures, thy end is come, and the measure of thy covetousness. Right? So this is it. This is the end, man. This is the end of Babylon the Great, man, in real time. And its allies, man. All right. Yahweh, power of hosts, have sworn by himself, saying, surely I will fill thee with men as with caterpillars, and they shall lift up a shout against thee. And we've been seeing the influx over the years of these migrants, man, which are really, for the most part, soldiers, man. All right. And America will be invaded. All right. The scriptures call this the land of unwalled villages. All right. And, in many ways, the invasion has already happened. All right. Okay. But yeah, man, I just wanted to, do a little quick little algorithm. You know, these are world events that are happening. All right. And they're eventually culminating into what? All these nations eventually shooting missiles on Babylon the Great, man. All right. And when I read it, the measure of thy covetousness, man. you know, because it talks about how all these nations that you spoiled will spoil thee. That's in Habakkuk the 2nd chapter, man. All right, all the nations that you spoiled, they're getting ready to spoil you. All right, and the trap has been laid for you in the way, man. So yeah, man, it's a little lesson I wanted to do. Hope there was some edification within it, and shalom.